Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Soundbites for Immigration Success. We bring you this series so you can get to know your fellow consultants, hear their story, their challenges, and their tips for success. I am happy to welcome Meredith Hunchak today. Hello, Meredith.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Meredith, tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to enter the immigration consulting field.
Sure. So I originally was hired as an office manager for an immigration company downtown Edmonton that was working with the nurses and bringing them over back in the day. And the company made some minor administrative changes, and I ended up having to run that company. And during that time, everything was evolving with immigration. And so I became more than an office manager and actually was thrusted into the whole immigration side of things. And back then, you didn't need to have a licensed RCIC in the office. You only needed to have one licensed RCIC. And so I actually just started learning immigration just by being thrusted in and running an office. And I really loved helping people and learning about the programs and dealing with people on a personal level. And after I'd worked with that company for 8 years, I went on mat leave. And when I came back, I was let go of my position. So I went and I took my exam, and passed my exam and was licensed in 2017 and started my own company.
So, Meredith, you really have been in the industry for a while and then obtained your licensing after the fact. You were telling me just before we went on air that you're situated in Alberta. You kind of have an interesting story there. You started off in HR. Do you want to share a little bit of that experience with the audience?
Sure. I currently am an HR manager for a hotel as well. So I kind of got my hand in both aspects of things. So for a hotel, I do HR, I do a lot of recruitment for them. But my immigration business, like I said, it's just dealing with people, right? And making connections with people and finding the right candidates. But it's also at that point, also helping them to succeed and be here and stay here. And that also works for the employer as well. But with respect to the immigration side of things, I get a lot of difficult cases sometimes too, where people have been refused before, and they come to you and you're kind of like their last resort. And it's always trying to just deal with the situation and deal with people's emotions and their situation in a understanding manner. And I think that also plays in both sides of HR and immigration at the same time, and just trying to be able to find the right pathway and situation to help that person if you can, right? It depends on if they meet the qualifications of the program, of course, and what you can do to make that work.
Meredith, you and I have had other conversations, and we've talked about that fine line between immigration and other pieces of the industry. In this aspect, with recruitment, you deal on the HR side. How do you balance that role of recruiting with the immigration side, or are you actually involved in the recruitment end?
I do. I do. I have a recruitment company that I started up with a partner of mine, and I do immigration. Plus, like I mentioned, I'm an HR manager for a hotel. So there is a fine line. But this is where you have your ethical consultants and your non-ethical consultants. You have to be very clear with the applicant that they do not have to use your services as an immigration consultant just because you are working with the employer and providing that employment for them. And this is where that's a very clear line you have to define for people. And this is where that line gets very blurred. And that's where people get taken advantage of, where they're selling LMIAs and they're charging obscene amounts of money. And this is where I make sure, for me, I am very ethical and professional in letting the client know that they have options, and I might not necessarily be that option for them. The employment is still theirs, the LMIA or the LMI exemption is still theirs, and how they choose to proceed forward is always their choice. And I think that's very important that we follow the regulations of the Code of Professional Conduct, and we make sure that we're above board at all aspects, no matter which side of immigration or recruitment that you're on.
I know it's something that you've been very passionate about, and that you've spoken often about the fact that you have clients here who are really just looking to make the best decisions for themselves and for their families. And so there is a need to really educate the employer, the applicant, and to educate others in our field about the standards that have to be met.
Yeah, I find I get a lot of clients who actually come to me because they have been mistreated by an agent, or they have been offered a job. They came here from across the world, and when they landed here, that consulting company left them stranded here. And now they have no job and nowhere to live, and they've paid obscene amounts of money. So I find that that's the biggest problem, as people are all about themselves, and they are constantly just taking money from people and just ruining our industry because they don't care about the reason why they're actually doing it, right? And I think, and again, they might not actually be licensed, and that's the other problem too, is we have so many UAPs out there who are not licensed and representing these people when they're not supposed to. But I think that's where we as RCICs who want to be reparable and in good standing stay and fight for that. And by acting professional and ethical is the way to do that, and helping others to make sure that they don't cross that line either, and pointing out those people who do.
Yeah, and that's why we have conversations like these and why we want to inform and educate. So I guess this brings me to my next question, and maybe you've already alluded to. For you, what has been the biggest challenge? You can, and maybe it's all the changes within the industry, like the number of programs, maybe it's a challenge in managing your business. But for you, what has been the most difficult part of your job, and how are you attempting to solve it?
Yeah, I think being an RCIC has, over the years, because I've been in it since 2008, has changed a lot. There weren't as many of us back then because, like I mentioned, you didn't have to be licensed, so it wasn't as much of a mandatory requirement. You only had to have one versus a whole office full. There's like the programs themselves, and the government is ever changing, which is always something you have to obviously be up and above board and making sure you understand. But then COVID came along, the changes in government themselves and the policies. But then, like I said, having a very large competition now where there wasn't that before, right? We have 20,000 plus, competitors. And being a third generation Canadian does make it a little bit harder when I didn't come through the process myself, right? And I don't have that pool to pull from. So I think that becomes a large challenge, is just trying to find clients and stay within the industry and stay active within it, but also being proactive too. Like, I love being a mentor. I'm part of the mentoring program with CICC. This will be my second time doing it. I love helping RCICs that are new into the industry because I didn't have that assistance back then, and also guiding them to make sure that they are compliant and they are above board and following the code of professional conduct, and making sure that they end up being, the best that they can be, and keeping our profession above board and acting in a way that we all want to be represented, and, the world to see us, not always the bad, right? So yeah, that's what I try to make sure that I help out there.
Well, and for our audience, I just want to say Meredith is very active volunteer with CAPIC. She's part of our education committee, and really, as noted before, believes strongly in education and leading by example. So in your challenges there, you talked about a lot of different things. You talked about the challenges of the profession or the changing programs and the need to stay on top of, learning and constantly being updated. And then the challenges of there's so many immigration consultants now, like we have now under the CICC 13,000. And of course, we've got immigration lawyers, and then we've got, legal clinics, and we've got people who do it on their own, and we've got unauthorized agents who provide advice. So you're right. At the end of the day, the client has a lot of choice, and hopefully they're going to choose a representative that's ethical and licensed and incompetent. So you're right. We have to work hard to attract clients and be professional. And I think you just said yourself, one of the best ways we can do it is just by having such high standards and being compliant.
Yeah, and I think that's the battle we've been fighting since day one, right? Is the more that the industry grows, and then you're also getting more of the unauthorized practitioners that are out there, and or ghost consultants, depending on how people recognize them. People don't make wise choices because sometimes they just want the golden ticket to come here, and they don't care how they get here, the repercussions of that process. And that international students were a very good example of that. And people will take advantage of people if they can, but you can't play the victim at the same time if you know that there's a right and a wrong side to things. But I think you guys have been really good with CAPIC as putting it out there, right? You have to make choices, make good choices, right? And here's how you do that. Make sure that your licensed RCIC is in good standing with CICC, that you're finding the consultants that you're actually allowed to, pay as representatives, and that they are doing right by you. And I think that's where, you educating the public is so important. But at the same time, we as RCICs also need to make sure that we uphold that standard as well, and not be doing things unethical to bring down our reputation, because a lot of us have worked very hard to maintain that, right? Like Monica, you've been in this industry for a very long time, and it's very hard when people are out there taking $10,000 or $20,000 from people and not providing the service. It makes us all look bad. So I think as RCICs, we need to uphold that standard.
We do. So I guess this will bring me to, and maybe again, you have alluded to it. If you could give some advice to somebody just starting off, or maybe it would be advice to yourself just starting off, what would it be? Would it be to strive for that ethical standards, don't compromise that?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people too, and CAPIC was a really good stepping stone for me when I was out there, because there wasn't as much social media and there wasn't as many of us out there. So the small group that there was, CAPIC was really good at providing advice and guiding us. And I think if you can find somebody to co-counsel or to that will take you under your wing when you first start out, that will help you in see things in a different perspective, and also how that company or that RCIC, how they have worked through the channels to get where they are. I think always staying above board on understanding the programs and making sure that you, as an RCIC who's taking money from somebody, know what you're doing, because that's where I find a lot of RCICs out there. You are signing service agreements with people, but you don't understand the program or the process. Well, then to me, you shouldn't be taking that service then until you understand what you're doing, because that's the knowledge and expertise that client is paying for. So I think that's where we have to have a better ethical background and uphold our professional standards as well, is that if you don't know what you're doing, co-counsel or find a way to understand it, or you take somebody else to do the service and you learn and mentor from that person until you understand it. But I think that's really important, is that for somebody who's new in the industry, it's going to be a struggle, but if you stick to it and you're passionate about it and you do things for the right reason, you charge a reasonable amount of money for the services and the expertise and knowledge that you have, and that's going to obviously change and grow as you do. So your fees are obviously going to increase based on that expertise and knowledge. I think then we'll be a better industry for it.
It was funny. I was just reviewing the college code because we're CAPIC's doing another entry to practice review course shortly. And I was looking at the code, and one of our obligations, it talks about the characteristic of the profession. And one of the characteristics is an understanding that you have to grow the profession and have an understanding of it, so that you're not an island unto itself, that you're part of a collective. And if one person is not doing something right, it really reflects badly on all of us. Meredith, my last question to you is, tell me something that has brought you great joy in this profession. Maybe it's something to do with a client, or maybe it's the satisfaction that you feel, but what brings you great joy in your job?
That's a good question. I've had many situations where clients have really struggled with one of their situations or their cases. And I find when you've put a lot of time and effort into a file, an application, and it turns out and the officer recognizes the hard work and the client met the expectations of the program, and you get a positive result. Like for instance, right now I have a medical inadmissibility for a PGP, and we've been working on it for 3 years now. And we had a PIL come in, and I did a lot of work on this file with respect to the medical inadmissibility for the father, and we finally got it approved. And I think that's the best feeling, is when you have the knowledge and the expertise because you've done your worst research and you've taken the time to put into that application, and that client's expectations are there because they've hired you to do that, and you get a positive result because of your hard work and your knowledge and expertise, I think that's the silver lining. I think that's why I do it, is because you've given that client what they were looking for, but you did it in a way that was hard and it was uphill the whole time. But because you've done your research and you've actually taken the time to do the job properly and you got a positive result for it. There's a lot of RCICs out there who try to do it the easy way out, and they'll submit an application in one time because it got approved. That makes it right. That's not how it is. You should be following the rules all the time because you put that client at risk. And I think that's what makes me love what I do, is when you see the excitement on that client's face from that positive result in uniting a family, or helping a family get, their PR, or helping them come to Canada and work here and make money and establish a life. And I think that's why I've always done it.
Yeah, I've written down some words here. It's having the knowledge to make a difference, and you've certainly done that. Meredith, I want to thank you for your honesty and your directness in talking about something that you're very passionate about, and for sharing your own journey. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I want to thank you in the audience. I forgot to identify myself. For those who don't know me, my name is Monica O'Brien. I look after all things education at CAPIC, and it has been my sincere pleasure to interview Meredith Lent-Hunchak for our podcast. Meredith, once again, thank you. Any final words?
No, I'm just grateful to be part of CAPIC and the podcast, and thanks for having me. And yeah, like I said, just everybody just keep doing what you're doing. And like I said, if we can be strong and united and professional and ethical, I think this industry has great things that we can do.
What great words to end this podcast. Thank you to you and our audience, and we'll see you at the next one.